Good evening, everyone. My name is Deb Turcott. I am the principal at Oriana Solutions, and I'm the host of the Women Not Working webinar series. I know we have quite a few folks who are joining us tonight, so we're just going to let them roll in as they enter the meeting. But I want to thank you on behalf of all of the speakers for joining us. We have a real treat for you tonight as we discuss communicating your value with Susana Fiere Consulting. I had the distinct pleasure of getting to know Susana when we were both working in human health. And so we're going to talk about that in a few minutes, but I just want to say a couple of quick reminders to everyone as you're joining tonight. If you could quickly mute yourself, we will, as soon as I stop sharing my screen and I introduce Susana, I will open the chat feature on my end, and I'll be moderating the chat throughout the evening so everyone has a chance to participate through the chat function. So I encourage you to pull that up and be ready, but also to mute yourself just so we don't have distractions in the background. A couple of other quick reminders for you. If you missed the kickoff session last week and you would like the link to the recording of that, you can email me at connect@orianasolutions.net. Again, that's connect@orianasolutions.net, and I'm happy to send you that link. Couple of other quick reminders. Next week's session, December 16th at 7 p.m. Eastern, will be with Kim Richmond of Richmond Wellness and Counseling, and she's going to talk all about adapting your mental health approach to help manage the moment and to match the moment regardless of circumstances. She has some really great tips and techniques that she will share with you. And then we'll have a break at the height of the holidays and be back on January 6th, moving into the next segment of the series, which is about making the most of the transition. So again, next week at 7 p.m. Eastern on December 16th, and then we'll have a quick break until after the holidays are over, and then we'll come back together on January 6th. But with all of that, I want to take a minute to introduce you all to Susana Fiere. So Susana and I both were working in human health at the same time. She was in it much longer than I was, but really we had the privilege and pleasure of working together as we navigated some really interesting community partnerships between our health systems. And Susana has her JD and is just an excellent and lifetime expert communicator from my perspective. But what impressed me most about Susana was that she had poise and confidence regardless of what message she was delivering. And sometimes when you're working in big community partnerships or you're trying to navigate difficult circumstances, that's not always easy to come by. And so when I was thinking about how do we help women really think about their value proposition, think about communicating that independent of circumstances, choices that you've had to make or choices that have been made for you sometimes along the way, how do we communicate that and really feel confident in our value proposition as we communicate? So when I was thinking about all of that, the first person that came to mind was Susana. And Susana also has recently launched her own business in the midst of the pandemic. So I think you're going to find tonight not only her expertise and her professional techniques that she can teach you, but also her personal story to be really motivating. And so with that, I just want to say thank you to Susana. So welcome, Susana. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Deb. Thanks so much. That was a lovely introduction and over the top. I want to say, congratulations to you too. And thank you for putting this entire series together for all of us as women as we progress through our life's journey and support each other and help each other. So it's an honor to be here tonight, and I really appreciate you and all the women who have joined, and men if they have as well. Who knows who's out there.
Right. Well, thank you again. Just so grateful to have you sharing everything that you're going to share with the women tonight. And of course, you and I have had a little teaser conversation, so I'm already excited about what everyone's going to get to learn. But if you could start maybe just telling everyone that's with us, all of our viewers, a little bit about yourself, and then maybe share why did this webinar series connect with you? What inspired you to say yes when I reached out to you and said, hey, I've got this idea. What do you think?
Sure. So, I think that one of the most important points that I want to make tonight is there is no single moment in time that defines you as a person. It's your collective lifespan and everything that you go through that is really critical that you remember, and that you are willing to use and bring forward depending on the circumstances, so that the things that you've gone through in your lifetime, good or bad, can be used to your advantage. And I can talk about myself quickly and help you see that life has not been all roses. There have been many challenges, many hurdles, and things that have just been downright bad luck. But it's what I've done with that bad luck and those things that I've gone through that I think really help strengthen who I am and how I talk about myself and how I convey value to others. So just honestly, starting back in high school, if you can believe it, I really wanted to be a ski racer with the United States ski team. So that's massively aspirational and very difficult to attain. But I was out there, I went to a specialized high school, and I tried my heart out. And I was so close, but I had bad luck. And I ended up in the hospital, and I ended up not making it to the World Cup that I was scheduled to race. And it was heart-wrenching. So big lemons, and then what are you going to do with that? Well, for me, it was time at that point to go to college and recognize that that dream was over. So I went to college, and I used those skills initially to coach others. And it was Special Olympics. And that was a really important transition for me at that time. I went through my 4 years of law school, of college at UVM, and then I really wanted to attend law school. I wanted to do something else. And I'm a talker. I'm very good at arguing. So it just seemed like a terrific fit. I studied for law school, went to law school, and started my career as an associate, as everyone does. And soon thereafter, I ran into a situation where the fit in the law firm was not right for me. And so even though things were really lovely at that point in time in terms of my career as a lawyer, the fit in where I was working, the environment I was in, was not. And so I left. I took a very bold step, and I opened my own law firm. And I had to learn everything soup to nuts on how to open a law firm, take care of the financials, certainly take care of my clients, practice law, all of that. I did that. And in those moments, you think, what am I doing? But I did it, and I believed in myself, and it worked out very well, because soon thereafter, I was asked to take my law firm, join with another, and I was made a partner. And I was able to negotiate that situation. It may surprise you. It surprised my parents at the time. There was, after some time passed, a desire for me to join the healthcare system and do mission-driven work and not get up and fight every day for someone else's rights, which was terrific for a period of time. But when you're fighting every day, that can take a toll on you. So I wanted to change careers entirely. And that meant for me a pay cut and putting myself in a position that there was nothing on my resume that said that I had the skill and experience to do it. I had to go in, and I had to prove myself, and I had to communicate my value. So I did that. I worked at Elliott Health System for over 18 years. I started in a director role, and I made it all the way through being a vice president, a leader of the organization. It is where I met Deb, and I was so lucky to have wonderful interactions with her there. And then after all of that time and all of that success, I did hit another milestone in my life where I had to make a personal decision about what was best for me going forward. And what turned out to be best for me was coming home, taking care of my family, taking care of myself, taking care of my husband, tending to a household that I got up and left every day, and I didn't get back until late in the day. It was the first time in my life without a title. It was my first time in my life without a boss. It was the first time in my life that, as people said, "Oh my God, what are you doing with your day?" I finally said, anything I want. And although it was frightening and it seems crazy to think it's frightening to be home, it turned out to be the right decision for me. And during the over a year time that I was home, I really thought hard. I used that time, and it's one of the skills I really hope to impart to you. When you have the time to reflect on what you've been through, use it and really try to figure out what parts of the journey for me do I really value and about myself, what I learned that I can use as a skill going forward, and what are the things that I maybe want to just not highlight going forward. And what do I want to do with all of my talent, all of my experience, all of my skill? And for me, it was to open my own consulting firm, and here I am today. And that is yet another leap of faith in myself. It takes some, believing that you can actually help others and use all of that talent and skill. So here I am, and I'm thrilled to talk to you about, I think the second part of your question, Deb, was, why this topic? I think the topic, immediately came to me when you asked what would I like to talk about, because I believe that many of us, when we go through a swing, whether it's positive or negative, we're continually questioning, what did I just do? Is this right for me? Am I valuable? Am I participating? Am I contributing? And we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. And I just want women to feel and believe that, yes, you have value no matter how you have come through your life's journey. You have learned so much along the way, and we're going to talk about some of that. And you can talk about it, and you can convince others. So that's what drew me to this topic.
Well, you just have had such a wonderful career, and you've been so brave. And that's one of the big themes that we have, Susana, throughout this series, is the bravery that it takes for women to do any number of things in their life and in their career. But particularly, I think about for you, like making some deliberate decisions along the way that may have seemed like a left turn to the people in your world, but yet you still did them because you felt confident that they were the right. Well, you mostly felt confident. Probably some days you woke up and didn't feel so confident. But so that brings me to my next question. When you think about the changes that you faced, the things that you have done, it's easy when we make those decisions or when we face circumstances that are challenging to doubt ourselves. And so how did you deal with doubt, and what did you do with that, and questioning your own value in the midst of those decisions? And then, of course, how did you then, once you've dealt with that, effectively communicate on the other end of those, processing those emotions?
Well, let's start with the fact that you're going to have those types of emotions. When people say, "Oh, I'm not afraid," or I didn't doubt myself. I mean, I just think that you're not being honest with yourself. I like to own my emotions. If I'm afraid, if I'm questioning the situation, questioning my ability, anything that is coming up that usually is bubbling up as slightly negative, I like to own those feelings, and I like to work with them and work them through. Sometimes if you don't allow yourself to have the emotion and work through it, then it's always going to linger there. I think it's better to say, okay, and I'm old fashioned. I love these. I love pen. I like paper, and I like to put things down on paper the old fashioned way. So if I am feeling a certain way and I need to work through it, I will write about it. I will start to work through sort of, okay, if I'm feeling this way and it's negative, what's the flip side of that same coin? Because there's always a flip side, and you've got to find it. So I guess my example is when I left here, I was practicing law, I was picking juries, I was good at this. And I left that whole career, and now I'm walking around an enormous health system, and I started thinking, oh my God, I got the job. What the hell did I just do? And you start to think, what am I going to be able to do this? And I've got so much to learn. But again, when you start to really allow yourself to have the feelings, address them, and if that for you is similar to me, putting some information about yourself on paper and then finding that flip side of the positives that counterbalance those negatives, then I think you'll start to emerge rather quickly and realize that it's not all negative. There's just so much positive inside you. But I also really believe that sometimes you just have to give yourself that moment of, oh, I am nervous or I am afraid, and that's natural. It's okay. There's always obviously the opportunity to talk to people who care about you, or that maybe you've known in a previous work environment or something that maybe could help mentor you through some of those feelings. So that I don't know if that's answering your question, Deb, but that's some of what first own it, then I think start to address it. And third, find the flip side of that coin and start to, really journal a little bit about the positives and what's really at the foundation of you, beautiful you and smart you and successful you. So that's what I would do.
No, I think it's a great example, Susanna, and I love the fact that you actually showed us a pen. I'm old school too, and so I love a pen and paper. And I think I print things, which I know is not popular anymore, but I do it. And when I was sharing with someone the other day who had faced a boss who really was challenging over the last couple of years, and I used a similar example. I was like, put a big piece of paper up on the wall, and I want you to write down all the things that you've done, just in and out of the room all day long. Write down things that you're proud of, things that you've done, things that you've been successful at. Because the moment we start to question our value, we carry that with us. And sometimes it takes the physical reminder and the exercise of writing it down on paper. And I know that oftentimes people kind of scoff at, well, I don't really want to write it down. But the reality is that is so helpful, because the moment we write it down is the moment we memorialize it. It's the moment it becomes tangible and real for us in our journey. So thank you for that, because I think it's a really great example of how we can seize control of remembering our value and reminding ourselves of that.
Deb, honestly, I mean, part of it is what all employers, when you're going for a job, the first thing everybody wants is a resume. I mean, it is a written document. It documents who you are and all the things you've done. I personally think a resume is only so good because it lacks personality for me. I love the cover letter. I love when you actually get to write about yourself and really let your personality shine in that kind of document, so that the person or group of people who are reading about you, it's not this rote, I did this, 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 and this, and it's bullet points. There's, a way to really shine through in a cover letter and say a little bit more about who you are and your strengths and why you're enthusiastic about a certain role or an organization. And so, it's just an example that, you take the writing that you're doing at home, and it does transfer to these more formal documents that end up being very important, and they are an introduction of who you are.
And can you think of another example, Susanna? Like you talked about the one where you were transitioning into the health system, but do you have another example maybe of a time in your career where you've had to use a technique to help you really think about your value, and then how you communicated that to, because we're talking about, these are all women who are exploring some part of their career path right now, whether it's they need a job or they're looking to advance in their career. And so is there another example? And then what did you do with that? Like you have this great example of writing it down on paper, but how else would you share your value, and how would you communicate that and feel confident about it? Like, how did you really surround yourself with the emotion of, I feel really confident about this, so I can articulate it with confidence?
Well, I think that what I'm going to talk about right now is applicable to any situation, and there are techniques that I think are critical to everyone. So for your success in getting a job. So almost any transition I have made in my life, I can assure you I have gone through these exercises. Um, Let me just talk about the fact that I went from um, college to law school, and I had worked at a movie theater. I didn't have any experience working at a law firm. I didn't work at a law firm while I was in law school. Friends of mine did, but I didn't. I don't know what I was thinking, but I was working in a movie theater. Anyway, um, so, but I always believed I would be fine. I would, I would just, be fine. So I think the techniques that I would ask you all to use is, yes, first write down what it is about you that you think are the attributes that are strongest and that you think the employer is looking for, that you possess. I would write down many of your skill sets. And in the world of technology today, I think that if you have honed skills that are required for the job and they are around technology, make sure you're prepared to talk about that. Really spend that time with the old-fashioned way, with that pen and paper. But what I have had to do, and I will never forget it, going in and speaking to partners of a law firm, trying to get my first job as an associate, is terrifying. But what I did not do, and what I don't want you to ever do, is do not go into a Zoom call for an interview or a face-to-face interview and hear yourself say the words about yourself for the first time. Go stay at home and practice out loud. Get in front of a mirror, get around friends and family, and really challenge yourself to hear you talk about you. Hear yourself say fabulous, wonderful, supporting things about yourself. And do it in a way that allows us to see body language, because your body language is very important. Facial expression, which is why the mirror is so great, because of course we all know if you say things like, "Oh, I'm a really great communicator," and you're looking off, like, that's not good communication. If you are a great communicator, we want to see you, and we don't want your eyes diverting and your body shrinking and everything else. So, practice, practice, practice. And one of the things that over the years I not only got pretty good at, but I coached many people, is in my role at Elliott Health System, I had to deal with the media. And when a news agency calls, they want a speaker and they want someone to give them sound bites. And sometimes these are challenging interviews, and sometimes you're about to be beat up. So what you need to do is, in your practice and in your writing, what are the key messages that you want people to hear about you? And I wouldn't go much more than 3, because, and Deb, disagree with me if you think it's more than 3, but typically I'm around 3. And the reason why is because people get nervous. You're going to get nervous while you're speaking. You want the job, and you need a couple of messages that you can continue to loop back to. And it's a real technique of looping, so that even if you don't like the question that was put to you, you have your core messages. You have the core things you want to convey. And these are the things you want to leave people with, so you can always return to a safe place. And I think that these are techniques that are not simple. They take practice, and the practice that is going to be, I think, best for all of you, and I know have worked for me, and I dare say for Deb, is start with writing, and then please move to practicing out loud, either in front of a mirror or to yourself. I can tell you that way back when I had my first jury trial, and I've had my first oral argument in front of the New Hampshire Supreme Court, there is no way I was going in there and hearing it for the first time. You just can't do that, because in our minds, we're brilliant. Oh my God, we're so smart. We sound so good in our minds. But then when we speak the words, it just doesn't come out exactly as you heard it in your head. So give yourself a chance to really practice and know those core messages, and that in and of itself, creating those core messages is kind of another topic.
No, I think it's great advice, Susanna. Thank you. And I would agree with you completely. Like, we can't remember too many things, right? And so, especially under pressure, it's really easy to say, oh, I've got these 15 things that I feel really strongly about for myself. But the reality is, we can't remember that many. So, to have the three key messages, they can be very encompassing, right? But they're really powerful when we've taken them from the written piece that we've done,
Mhm.
because we're like, that really resonates with me. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to make that part of me, like my mantra, who I am, and I'm going to practice those messages. And another technique, if you like, some people feel weird about the mirror. I get it. Like, but I speak to thousands of people all year long, but I promise you, there's not a moment that I've gotten on a stage and I have not practiced. And so a good speaker, Brene Brown, you name it, Simon Sinek, they're casual, but they make it look easy. But I promise you, they've practiced. And so this step of practicing is a great technique. And Zoom offers you can get a free Zoom license and download, and you can record yourself. So if you really want to see how you sound, just talk and record yourself and then come back. So you can actually, comment on yourself later on as opposed to in the middle of it. But that way you can really practice through the whole journey of speaking about something. And, and we can talk to you about a few things you can pick apart for yourself so that way, if you are saying things that, are showing you might not be confident or are questioning your own value, you'll know what red flags to pick up on. But Zoom is another great way, or GoToMeeting, or any of those that will record you so you can see yourself later. We don't like watching ourselves, but the reality is it is how we can communicate more effectively.
I completely agree. And I think as part of that, it's not just, it's those core messages, but then also you always want to do your homework on what are the types of questions I'm going to get. Everybody in every interview is going to say, why do you want to work here? I hope you have an answer to that. And I hope you have heard it out loud before the interview. And if you're really nervous and it is a Zoom call, then around your computer screen, put a little post-it note and have some notes. I have some today for this. So it's not cheating. You can't see my notes, but I have them here because no matter how seasoned you are at this, at times, it's just nice to be able to glance at a note. And when you have an opportunity with something like Zoom and no one can see your notes, go ahead and put them in front of you. It's always a great technique.
And I'd add to that too, Susanna, like even when I interview people for a role, even when you're in front of someone, I love it when someone pulls out their notebook and they've got some things they've written down, whether that be questions that they have, whatever the tool is that helps you feel comfortable about your messaging, use that tool, because to an employer, that looks like you're prepared. I feel like you've done your homework, you've thought about it in advance, and then you're more comfortable. And the moment that you're more comfortable, you are more confident in communicating whatever your message is. And so you're totally right. And I love the fact that you actually showed us your sticky notes. So thank you.
And I completely agree with your point. There's nothing wrong with taking out your notebook, having your notes. It screams, I've been doing my homework and I care about this. And when you're, emoting that you care, that is really important.
And so I'd like to do a few like really specific examples if we can, because we had some questions come in advance from people who were attending. And I think there are questions that a lot of viewers might have. And so what about if you have a gap in employment? Like, so sometimes we have, we do training, or you took some time where you were really thinking about what you wanted to do with your career. It happens to a lot of people. So it could be training, job change, intentionally, unintentionally, whatever it is. But how can you help people feel really confident, and our viewers tonight feel really confident about communicating their value with a gap in employment?
Sure. I think it's a great question. And I think it's an important question. And especially now, I think many people are going to have a gap in employment. But even if all of COVID wasn't happening and there weren't so many people with a gap in employment, it is always a situation where you will have to be prepared to explain that there has been some gap. I think it's best to own exactly what's on your resume. It's not as if people are missing it. They see it, they know it, and they're wondering, what is that gap? It's not the end of the world, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, it may be a fabulous thing, because if you have decided, like I have, that you needed to separate from a previous employer and take some time at home, and then you use that time in whatever way you used it, I would be proud to tell someone that and own that. And I think if you shrink from it and you are feeling somehow guilty about a decision you made, then that isn't going to resonate well with people. So I would say, first of all, what's the reason you have the gap in employment? Be prepared to explain that gap, and or make it clear that for personal reasons you took some time away from work, but that at this point in time you're ready to re-enter the workforce for all of these reasons, and this is what you bring. Don't let it linger out there as the most important point. Okay, there was a gap, move on. You've got many other things to talk about that are much more important to the person making that decision than the gap in employment. Now, having said that, I do want to make this kind of critical point, which is, if you have never worked, and so you would think this is a major gap in employment. I have never formally had a title in the workforce. I say to you, and I have great love for my mother, and I really admire what she did with my four brothers and I, which was stay at home and raise us. And if you ask me, she is the chief household officer. She is the vice president of human resources. She is the chief financial officer. She is in charge of all of the logistics. She has been the household representative to teachers, coaches, everything else. She's volunteered. You may be looking at yourself in a way that's not fair in terms of how much you have done with that time at home, whether it was with kids or not. If you have no kids and you've been home, but you've done volunteer work, civic work, whatever it is, step back from that gap in employment. Look at the big picture of who you are. Please take the pen out and put it to paper and start to write down all those great things about yourself, because I can guarantee there's a message of great value that you have that you're going to want to convey as a result of all of that time that you have spent doing whatever it was. And own it, love it, and explain it. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I'm thinking of all the times when, we've had to interact with the media, and the moment you don't let it become a story, it stops being a story. And so, if you have a gap in employment, Susanna's right. So you have a gap in employment, like, probably half of the world has a gap in their employment somewhere along the way. But yet we look at this as a big obstacle for ourselves. So yes, I took some time to do X, Y, or Z, or yeah, we had some personal family matters we had to deal with. And then, but to your point, move into a very productive line of conversation where you are now controlling the message and giving people, that whoever's interviewing, whoever you're speaking with, you've got this forward thinking approach. I'm committed, I'm in this now, I'm excited to rejoin the workforce. And perhaps you did a series of things during that gap. So I attended this webinar series for women where we were exploring all of these different skills. So I feel like I've advanced my communication skills, I've advanced my mental health, whatever you want to talk about. But you make the conversation about how you're taking it forward, as opposed to leaving them thinking about your answer with the gap. So answer the question with the gap and then give them something else to chew on, because you want to control the message out of that gap conversation. Great, great example, Susanna. I thank you so much. I have another specific question though, if you're game.
I'm game.
All right, great. So we had someone else write in who she called herself worldly wise, which I loved. I would describe someone in that reference as more maybe later career professional. And so, how do you communicate with value? I think a lot of folks, and I know a lot of my clients for coaching, tend to be later career professionals who are struggling with what they feel like is ageism right now. And so, how do you help those folks who are later in their career communicate their value with confidence? What are some of the techniques you could give them right now?
Okay, so that's a great question. And I think my mind immediately goes to mature. You are a mature person. You're probably more worldly than most people who are applying for the same position. And on top of all the other techniques we've talked about, specifically communicating your value, I think requires you to recognize in yourself that you have seen so much. You have been through so much. You have probably and potentially seen life without massive technology. So, what that tells me and what I would convey is I know how to get the job done. I've been there when the job really requires me to do all the work and collaborate with the others around me, not have technology take over. And what that has taught you and what I believe is there's just a work ethic that comes, with a mature person who is applying for a job. And that's not always true anymore. And I'll pick on one of my brothers. Okay, so it's no one specific and it's not a woman. But you know, I'm older. I'm a little bit older than my brother. I'm one of five, but I'm second oldest. So the younger ones, they don't want to work as hard, and they're very reliant on technology. And I'm sort of offended by it at times because just because you're younger and you're swinging, into the workforce now doesn't mean it's supposed to be easy. So, recognize the fact that as a mature person who has been there, done that, and seen, real rolling up your sleeves and working hard, that's something that sets you apart. And that's something that I think you should feel very excited to share with anybody listening and own it. I think that there's a piece of a mature individual applying for a job that speaks to having seen loyalty and ambassadorship in the community because you represent the organization you work for. And in many communities, smaller communities especially, people really know each other. And most employers really want great ambassadors out in the community that reflect well upon them as employers. So you bring that knowledge and experience and that caring to sort of the broader picture of employment with a certain organization. I think that respect is a huge thing. The ability to really recognize that there are hierarchies in the workplace. You respect that. You're willing to work, certainly within the bounds of what is being asked of you, and that perhaps I think that if you are a mature person looking at new job and it does require some segment of technology that seems a little bit out of your league, perhaps really look at the fit between you and that job and decide whether that's what you can do. Because I would prefer if you go after something where you can say, and I know that I have to be able to do Excel spreadsheets. And here's the great news. I'm fully trained. I know how to do, you've got to be able to convey that there is nothing in the job description, despite the fact that perhaps it may seem like you don't know this stuff. You have trained, you know how to do it. You're savvy and ready to roll day one. It won't be day one, I need training in 3 of these things that you're requiring. I think I just I just think there is nothing about the more mature person applying for a job that is a negative unless you make it a negative. And I think you've got to do what everybody else is doing, and know the job that you're applying for. Look very, honestly at yourself and at what's being asked, and decide, is that the right fit for you? And if it is, certainly, all the other techniques that we've talked about, get ready, get prepared. Hopefully you get that interview. And then do not shrink for 1 minute while you're on that interview. Do not have in your mind, oh my God, are they going to think that I've been out of the workforce for too long, or that perhaps I'm too mature for this job, or that I have too much experience? You will convey the wrong message if you're thinking it and feeling it. We will get what you are giving. So you have to be authentic. You've got to be authentic. You've got to convey what you really want us to believe in you. And with practice, you can do it. I know you can. Does that help?
It's great. I think it's great. And I'm going to reiterate one of the last points that you made, because I think it's so important. When we talk about communication theory, we talk about the little kid that's running with a glass of water, right? And instead of saying, don't drop that, we always say, hold on to that, because the last message that's playing through their head is the positive one, the one that we actually want them to do. And so your point of, don't be thinking about it, because you will exude it, right? There will be some part of your energy that's going to showcase if you're doubting yourself because you feel like you're a later career professional, and maybe they're going to choose someone younger or someone who's not as expensive. I hear that one a lot.
Mhm.
The reality is you are expensive because you have worth. You are expensive because you have years of experience and you have value. So carry the confidence for what you represent and all that you've done through your journey. That way, that's what's coming off of you. That's the energy that they're feeling. If you feel doubt about your age and the point in your career where you are, or the gap in your employment or anything else, they're going to sense that doubt in you. So practice thinking about the positives of that. And that's the message that you carry, which goes back to, what are your 3 key messages that you talked about at the beginning? So, I
Well,
think these
let me
techniques.
just pounce on that for a sec, Deb. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I did when I left the practice of law and I went to the health system and joined as a director of philanthropy, which was my first role there. I took a massive pay cut. And I didn't feel like that was a definition of my value. I was trying to transition my career somewhere else. Honestly, in my mind, I kept saying to myself, they have no idea what they're about to get in me. They just have to get me first. And I have to be willing to take less and then prove myself a little bit. And then things will get rolling. And that is exactly what happened. Now, yes, is it a gamble? I took a massive pay cut, like I said. But again, I truly believed that once I got in the door and once I showed them what I was really made of, it was all going to turn out okay. And if you are, someone who is willing to take just a little bit of risk, sometimes it's just getting your foot in the door, just getting that chance to really show people, when you have boots on the ground, how you can shine for them and how valuable you are, that the monetary value will follow. And I think, that's something to keep in mind, because I would hate to think that there's a great opportunity to work for a fabulous employer, and you dig in, for some sum of money that actually could be there. It could be there. It may not be there day one, but it could be there. And also, look at the total compensation package, because if you need health insurance, if you need retirement, there are opportunities. And I just finished coaching someone who, this is a person who has been a professional. They're really down and out. There are companies like a Target, like a Walmart, like Home Depot. You have to recognize that there's a bigger compensation package, and it may actually if you get your foot in the door, lead to something better and a management position and all that. So, don't cut off your nose to spite your face, and recognize that sometimes there's a little risk, but the risk is worth it, because when you get there, you're always, every day, going to be communicating your value. You will be showing your value. You will be reiterating to them that they made the right choice in you.
I think it's a great point, Susanna. We always say, the journey to success is never a straight line. Like, I'm sure many of you have seen the cartoons where it's like, we think success goes like this. And instead it's like, like all over the place. But I always tell people, it's like, think about the ladder to success more as a staircase, right? Sometimes you go up, sometimes you go over to go back up again. And so that journey can obviously take many directions, but the reality is, remembering to keep your key messages, the 3 messages that you talked about, making sure that you're taking the time to exercise and write on paper what your value proposition is, so you feel confident when you get to your 3 messages, and to carry the emotions you want someone to leave with, right? So, if you want them to feel positive about this about you, that's what you carry. You own the gap, or you own the amount of experience you have, but then you own the next statement. And that statement is what that they carry with them. And so I think this has just been really, really helpful to give pragmatic techniques and tips on how to do this. Is there anything else you feel like, because we're about out of time, but anything else you want to leave our viewers with tonight? Any words of wisdom or encouragement or communicating your value techniques?
I would say, I guess in the end, 2 things. One thing that we didn't talk too much about, but I would suggest everyone try to do, is really know your audience. So I may have said it, if I said it, I'm repeating myself. Know your audience, do your homework. If you can really get an idea of the employer you're looking at, who you might be interviewing with. Don't go into an interview and say something like, the reason why I want to come to this organization is because I believe in your mission. And I say, because I'm interviewing you, what is it about the mission that really motivates you? And you're like, I didn't actually look up the mission. I have no idea what your mission is. It just sounded great. Don't give us answers that you don't believe in. So that leads me to my second point. Know your audience, do your homework, but be authentic. Always be authentic. Don't fib, don't lie. Own who you are, own the ups and downs. And with practice, I really believe that you will convey a beautiful message about the value of you, and that authenticity will shine through.
That's great, Susanna. Thank you so much. So before I give a couple quick reminders at the end, Susanna, I want to thank you again. It's always so nice to see your face, but especially now that we live in different parts of the country, but also really great and helpful tips and techniques. I will let you know if any of you have questions about what Susanna covered tonight. Obviously, feel free to email connect@orianasolutions.net. If I can't answer them, I will tap into Susanna so that we can get your questions answered. But the other thing too is, if you're just like, I could really use a friendly face and I'd love to practice on someone, give us a call, email us, whatever. Sometimes it's just nice to have someone else who helps you think through those messages and that journey. And if you don't have a support system that can help you do that, don't be afraid to email us at connect@orianasolutions.net. And then also, again, don't forget, next Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, December 16th, we have our next session in the series, which is with Kim Richmond of Richmond Wellness and Counseling, talking about adapting your mental health approach to match the moment. And then we'll have a little break and then come in after the new year. But if there's any of these sessions you want to share with someone else, or you feel like you've missed, just let me know at connect@orianasolutions.net, and we'll send you the video link for the previously recorded ones. So thank you again, Susanna. Really appreciate your time tonight. You've been fabulous.
Oh, thank you. It's been wonderful. It's great to see you too. And ladies out there, I hope this was helpful, and we are here for you.
Great. Thank you, everyone. We hope you have a great night. And again, don't forget to let us know if you have any additional questions. Take care.